Good morning, everyone. How are we feeling? How are we feeling? Thank you. Distinguished guests, fellow youth champions, and friends, good morning. I'm so excited to welcome those of y'all in person to the FAO headquarters in Rome, Italy, and we're all sending a huge hello to everyone joining online from around the world. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from whatever time you're joining in from. My name is Osei Ehieneta Oregon, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs.
And my name is David Giles, my pronouns are he, him, and we are delighted to welcome you to the opening session of the Youth Assembly here at the main stage of the Global Youth Forum for this insightful and thought-provoking week.
This week, we've gathered to hear stories from youth from all over the world and witness their powerful initiatives that are transforming policy into action. Young people are shaping our global agri-food systems through meaningful engagement in policy spaces. Here in Rome, we have over 10,000 participants joining us from all over to celebrate our shared commitment to this year's theme, good food for all, for today and tomorrow. I thought y'all were gonna join in with me.
Let's do that again, okay?
Good food for all, for today and tomorrow. I'm gonna wake you up, I promise. Including our virtual participants, the 4th annual World Food Forum flagship event has over 16,000 participants. So let's make some noise for that.
And if this is your first time attending in person or online, it may be your first World Food Forum flagship, but I can assure you it will not be your last. I hope you are as excited as Osei and I for this jam-packed week ahead, filled with learning, collaboration, growth, and fun.
And for those of y'all who keep coming back year after year, it's because of your passion and hard work and innovation that we're able to be bigger and better every time. This year's Youth Assembly, which has been meeting virtually throughout the year and will gather in person at this week's flagship event, will have the topic of meaningful youth engagement in the policy space.
And then how we turn this policy into concrete action.
And it's arisen time and time again.
And joining us here to share her wisdom on the topic, we have the great pleasure of having Ms. Corinna Hawkes, Director of the Food Systems and Food Safety Division here at FAO. Please join me in welcoming her on stage.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Good morning to everyone here. Good morning to all of those online. My name is Corinna Hawkes, and I'm Director of the Agri-Food Systems and Food Safety Division here at FAO. And I have to say, it's a real honour to be here at this first Youth Main Stage event for what promises to be a really thrilling World Food Forum. The forum, I've got to say, I was here last year. The forum was a highlight of my year last year. It gave such a sense of ambition, such a sense of energy, and also a sense of accountability, which has really inspired me over the last 12 months. And I have no doubt that that will happen again, and probably even more given the growth, extraordinary growth of the World Food Forum and its activities. And one of those areas I'm really excited about are the regional and thematic assemblies led by the Youth Policy Board. It's fantastic to see voices from different regions, from different expertise, from different sectors, from different spaces being brought together in meaningful dialogue. This is what youth leadership is all about, having that dialogue and really showing leadership in a collective way. So a big congratulations to all of those who've been involved, and I look forward to learning more throughout the course of this week. Now, of course, the reason why those assemblies exist, the reason why we're here in this room today, we're here at the World Food Forum, is because we believe in the power of the food system. We believe in the power of the food system to deliver so many solutions to the challenges that our world faces today. Or agri-food system, as we say at FAO, because we're also concerned about the products, agricultural products beyond food, like fuel and fibre. Now, doubtless, most of you have heard the phrase, the food system or the agri-food system is broken. I have to say that if we look at the evidence, that's not really the case. If it was completely broken, if it was completely smashed to pieces, we wouldn't have any food or any other agricultural products. But we do. The agri-food system is still doing the job that historically we've asked it to do. It's producing food, it's transporting food, distributing, aggregating, trading, selling, processing, disposing of. It's doing the things that historically we have asked the agri-food system to do. But when you think about it, in more recent years, we've been asking the agri-food system to do a lot more than that. We now say to the agri-food system, not only is it enough to, not only is it sufficient to produce enough food, but you need to make sure that that food reaches the 8.2 billion people in this world today, and it's affordable. And that food needs to be safe, it needs to be nutritious, it needs to be diverse. It needs to nurture nature, clean our water, protect our planet from climate change, nourish our soils. It needs to support the millions of people who work in agri-food systems so they live better lives. It needs to grow equality for women and give them and other groups who experience marginalization, including youth, agency. It needs to help countries prosper and grow their rural and urban economies. In other words, agri-food systems need to produce good food for today and tomorrow, giving us better production, better nutrition, better environment, a better life, leaving no one behind. So we're asking the agri-food system to do a lot more than we ever did before. It has a lot of jobs to do. And the sad part is that adults are expecting it to do so much more without giving it the resources, the investments, the enabling policy environment that it needs to deliver those things. So no wonder the agri-food system is exhausted. No wonder the agri-food system is sick. No wonder it's not able to leverage its true value, its full power. No wonder it needs youth. For these agri-food systems, with their expanded purpose, are still newly emerging. They are still in their youth. They've been reborn with a new purpose, and yet they're not being given what they need to thrive and grow. And maybe the young people in this room and online know how that feels. The high expectation placed on us from our studies, our workplace, or maybe our families, and all over society. The expectations that are placed on us that we then place on ourselves, that leads to physical and mental stress and exhaustion. So I think younger people at that stage of life, a similar stage of life as these newly emerging agri-food systems, they can better understand how that food system feels, what that agri-food systems needs, and that we need to treat the agri-food system as we want to be treated ourselves. Given space, given resources, given training, given mentorship, given voice, given agency, to leverage our power to deliver on those expectations. So given that we are asking the agri-food system to do something different, more of the same is not going to work. We want the agri-food system to be treated the same way ourselves, and to remember that we thrive when the different parts of ourselves are connected, and that we recognize that we need to consider all different parts of the systems and the connections between them in order to thrive. We need to be treated like that. The agri-food system needs to be treated like that in what we call a systems approach. So we are asking the agri-food system to do something different to before. And if adults designed what the food system did before for its previous purpose, we now need youth to decide what actions are needed in order to bring the agri-food system from exhaustion to vigor and from sickness to health. It is youth that we need to define what those actions are. So the theme of this event is from policy to action. But let's think about it in the other direction, from action to policy. What are the actions that youth think need to be taken in order to help the agri-food system function differently, to produce a better set of outcomes, to serve their needs, to serve your needs for now and for future generations? And then what policies are needed to enable that? We need collective working, intergenerational thinking to figure this out. Youth leadership, such as that taken in the assemblies, can really show us what this collective action is and who needs to do what. So I wish you the very best over the next week on that journey to figuring out and bringing youth into the picture to really be involved and make those decisions. Thank you very much.
And let's give it up one more time for Ms. Corinna Hawkins. Corinna, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us your time, wisdom, and expertise, demonstrating to us your commitment to supporting young leaders. We now have a special surprise from the World Food Forum Culture team, and to present that to us, I will now be welcoming to the stage our colleague, Lucas Muller. Over to you, Lucas.
Thank you for that introduction, I'll say. I'm not getting used to getting introduced, but it's fun. So thank you for being here. And I'm here to introduce this year's World Food Forum Film Festival. And the film festival uses the power of film to share compelling stories about agri-food systems and the change makers within them. And this year we're celebrating 5 young filmmakers across 5 different categories. Best focus on innovation, best focus on agri-food systems, best fiction, best cinematography, and of course, best documentary. And as we mark the 4th edition of the film festival, the themes explored this year include sustainability and empowerment in the global south, community-based approaches to agriculture, and food security in fragile environments. The winning films were selected by a distinguished jury of experts in the field of sustainability, media, and culture. To discover the winning films, meet the talented directors, and please join us tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. right here in the Shake Zayed Center on the big screen. And if you like what you see, we will also have the film screening on the big screen here on Thursday at 1 p.m. and Friday at 12:45. So enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Lucas, for introducing the film festival. I am so excited myself to be here to see who's announced the winners of these 5 categories, and also to watch the films during the 2 screenings. So be sure to check the agenda, be back here. I'll be here, Ose will be here, Lucas will be here, and we can't wait to join you all for this. So now I'm very happy to introduce Gabrielle Adami, one of our Youth Policy Board members, who will be moderating our panel. So feel free to join me up here on stage. A round of applause for our moderator. So, Gabrielle will be moderating a panel on bridging innovation and tradition, youth-led solutions for sustainable agriculture. And I now have the pleasure of introducing to the stage, to join Gabrielle, Mr. Joachim Middelhoff, Dutch Ambassador for Youth, Education and Work, joined by Miss Ida Simosen, United Nations Youth Representative for Biodiversity and Food of the Netherlands. And to join them, I have Mr. Marco Cavalcante, Director of Food Systems at the UN World Food Programme. And Ms. Judy Kipkenda, Co-Chair of the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. Thank you. Over to you, Gabrielle.
Good morning, everyone. Wait, we're still trying to wake up the audience. Good morning, everyone. Okay, now it's good. It's such a pleasure to be here with such a good panelist. As David gave a spoiler, I'm Gabriel, I'm 19 years old, I'm from Brazil, and I'm a Youth Policy Board member from the Latin America and the Caribbean region. So now, jumping to our panel, we need to talk about who is shaping tomorrow's agri-food system and who is shaping today's agri-food system. So first, Mr. Middelhoff, what role do you see youth playing in shaping climate-smart agricultural policies? What are the key areas to consider ensuring an effective transition from policy to action?
Yes, thank you so much, and good morning to everyone. Well, it's of course no question that there's a plethora of challenges for the agri-food sector. So we actually need youth to further develop the sector and make it future-proof. And we need them in 4 different roles. We need their innovative ideas, because without them and without the proper use of technology and the implementation of technology, we cannot overcome the challenges that are out there. We need to be able to leverage the possibilities of technology and innovation, but we also need youth as future leaders. Youth will be the future stewards of our agricultural systems, making their engagement in climate-smart practices essential for future-proofing the agri-food systems. Third, we need them as digital pioneers, applying what they've learned, new technologies into the sector so that we can really scale up our efforts. We also need them as workers. As I mentioned yesterday, the average age of farmers worldwide is 55, and in some regions it's way higher. So we need to have their involvement in the sector. And last but most certainly not least, we need them as agents for change. We need to leverage their views. We need to listen to young people as partners, and the only way to do that is by applying meaningful youth participation that is essential for future-proofing the agri-food system. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mrs. Simonsen, what is your perspective on this topic?
I think we need youth everywhere. And to gather input from youth everywhere in the Netherlands, my colleague Bine Lim and I gathered input at different farms. I'm also a farmer myself. That's why I'm very awkwardly holding this little jar of soil from my farm. And I brought this today to remind us of something very vital. About 4,000 years ago, in the Vedas, loosely translated from the Sanskrit proverb, it says, "On this handful of soil, our survival depends. Preserve it, and it will give us food, fuel, shelter, and it will surround us with beauty. Abuse it, and it will crumble and die, taking humanity with it." I think that we as youth are seeds, and we have everything already inside us to provide all the solutions to nourish the world equitably and sustainably. But we need good soil. And I think a supportive and enabling policy environment is that good soil. And that good soil should really provide opportunities for us to be completely involved in the full policy cycle. So that means from problem identification to the formulation of policy, to the implementation of policy, to monitoring and review. And in order to facilitate our participation, we really need a lot of intergenerational collaboration and capacity building. This is something that came up time and time again in the consultations that we did with Dutch youth, but also with youth all over the world during an international webinar. Intergenerational collaboration is truly key. Another key component is a whole of society approach. We really need everyone to solve the challenges that are plaguing our food systems, from the plundering of our soils to contributing to biodiversity loss, heating our climate, basically using up all the water resources we have and leaving a lot of people in hunger and providing a lot of unjust labor conditions. We need everyone. But when youth are invited into multi-stakeholder fora, what we often fail to do is addressing the power inequalities that are already there. When we talk about putting policy into action, what we need to do is we need to identify the barriers that are making it that we're not actually implementing our policy, that we're not actually hitting our climate and biodiversity and food production targets. And in order to do so, we need strong conflict of interest policies, and we need to really put youth at the center, because if we are not at the table from entree to dessert, we are on the menu. And I'm talking especially about marginalized youth at the edge of our food systems, indigenous peoples, people from the global south, youth with disabilities, etc. This is really, really, really vital. And my last point on that is that as youth, we have solutions, we are innovative, but innovation is not just about building and creating new things. It is also about dismantling the toxic power structures that are really riding on unsustainable economic interests in our food system. So that means that we as youth need to have an autonomous voice to speak out about this. It's no mistake that in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, Target 19 is not just about raising $200 billion a year by 2030 for positive upscaling or upscaling of positive incentives to protect nature, especially in relation to our food systems. At the same time, we need $500 billion of reduction in harmful incentives. For example, when it comes to our subsidies in agriculture worldwide, also from the European Union and the Netherlands, let's be honest, but also globally, but also when it comes to private investments. We need a reduction of $500 billion of harmful economic investments. So it's really important that as youth, we're also part of dismantling the things that don't work. Thank you.
Thank you for your insightful interventions. I think this is very linked with our next question and with what Mrs. Hawks said about how can we create an environment with affordable food. So my next question is for Mr. Cavalcanti. What is the relationship between food systems and the rise of acute hunger? And what role do you see youth playing in shaping future food systems?
Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you for the question. A very big pleasure to be here with you. When I started with WFP about 20 years ago, one of my first public intervention was about youth. And at that time, I was a part of the youth. And then since I progressed in my career, I started to become adult. And yesterday, when I was trying my intervention in front of the mirror, my daughter came, she's 14, and she saw me putting the glasses away while reading and said, "Dad, you're becoming a senior now." So I apologize. I have to take the glasses now to read closer. No, that's a sign of seniority, according to my daughter. So I'm really moving into the stage of life now. Jokes aside, there's a couple of numbers I would like to give you. About 300 million people suffering acute hunger, 800 million that don't know where to get the next meal. But there is another one that's quite interesting. FAO colleagues unleashed recently is the 2.8 billion people that can't afford an healthy diet. That is a sign that something is wrong. And I agree with the director of FAO. It's not broken, but could be better. We could do more to improve our food system. And when I say improve, I mean making them more resilient, more inclusive, more efficient. There are several problems in terms of production, supply chain disruption, market inequality, access, post-harvest losses. Recently, I was accompanying our ED at the G7. We had a meeting with the Minister of Agriculture from an African country. And he was telling us that his cereal production loses 30% after the harvest. And the horticultural production, fruit and vegetables, 50%. So imagine every time you go withdraw your salary at the bank machine, you come back and when you're at home, 50% of your money is gone. That's pretty much how these farmers face. And youth is a very big percentage of the population in Africa. About 1.2 billion people are below 25, 80% of which are involved in agriculture. So how can we turn the tide and make them the protagonist of the change, as my colleague was saying before? Well, there are some few ideas that I took note of. One, for sure, is to promote the sharing of innovation and technology. where there is innovation and technology, move it to where there is less. Try to promote this sharing of the know-how. Second is the creation of innovation and technology. And how do you create and foster an environment to create innovation and technologies? By investing in education. Too many people still don't go to school, and too many people that go to school don't learn enough. So for example, in the organization where I work, we promote, together with the Rome-based agencies and a large coalition of stakeholders, the school meals that will not only incentivize people to send kids to school, but also allows them that when they're in school to learn better. And then finally, let me make some final reflection on what can be done, because this is not a problem of Africa or a problem of Asia or the south of the world. It's a problem that we face everywhere, even here. I do encourage all the youth to be as much involved as possible. Read, write, debate, discuss, engage, be an example, and don't be taken down from the failure of our generation. It looks like the SDG will not be met, but it doesn't mean that they cannot be met. It looks like we failed, but it doesn't mean that we will need to continue to fail. And allow the youth to make mistakes as well. Don't be judgmental against the youth. It's something we can do. Because only allowing them to thrive in an environment where you are free to make mistakes is where this environment will allow them to be better, to thrive, to grow, and to be the adult that will reach zero hunger. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Cavalcanti. I think we are facing some quite challenges in the agricultural systems because, for an example, in Brazil, we are facing an extreme drought, the worst drought actually in 75 years. This drought impact not just the agri-food systems, but also the school that you say. So also the students and every youth that takes part in Brazil. So I think that what you say is very linked with our next question as well on how can we spread knowledge and how can traditional indigenous knowledge, Mrs. Kipenda, play a role in building resilient and climate smart agricultural systems.
Thank you so much. First, I want to acknowledge the speakers, quite insightful. I'll first ask, what is climate smart agriculture? And I'm asking this from the indigenous people's perspective, because the conventional definition of smart agriculture might not make same sense to us. To me, as an indigenous person, I would tend to think of our traditional ways, our traditional farming systems, our indigenous food production systems as very smart compared to what conventional science tends to define climate smart agriculture. So I'm just thinking about the objectives of climate smart agriculture, building resilience through adaptation, increasing food production, and what was the other thing? But now, just looking at the two, I have no problem with all the objectives of the climate smart agriculture. My biggest problem is the food production, because I believe that's where we're going wrong. And thank you for bringing this question to us, because I think this is where we can have, we can integrate the indigenous traditional knowledge to tackle the issue of increasing food production. Because the third thing was reducing emissions. And while I tend to disagree with the two, the food production and increasing emissions, because while you're increasing production, and reducing emissions through reducing use of excessive fossil fuels. During increasing of food production, you're still using pesticides and excessive conventional farming inputs. And in traditional food production systems, we believe in allowing the biodynamics rhythm. I don't know if that makes sense. Allowing the nature to take its course, using locally available farm inputs, producing biofertilizers, which are locally available, which are traditional knowledge that has been passed down to us by our elders, of course. I'm also thinking about the adaptation strategies applied by the indigenous communities or indigenous peoples. I'm thinking about the weather forecasting patterns that could be integrated rather than depending on conventional or science way of forecasting the weather. I'm thinking of so many things that we can actually integrate into the climate, what you call the climate smart agriculture. But what I'm trying to say here is, can we take a pause as a people of the world and think where we came from and not what is being invented? Because I think when we started inventing what we call climate smart agriculture in the science perspective is where we started going wrong as a world. And that's why we're talking about things, about diseases, we're talking about the droughts, we're talking about deaths. In traditional indigenous people's way of producing food, to tackle things like drought, as you say, of course, we still have so many things that we do to avert drought. We have traditional climate resilient crops that people should be thinking of rather than thinking of using excessive fertilizers and all that. We have crops which are drought resistant, and these crops are what have made indigenous peoples to be able to live healthy lives for so long. I mean, like, there's so many ideas going through my mind, but I just wanted us to try and find a balance of demystifying what is climate smart agriculture from the science perspective compared to the indigenous people's perspectives. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we definitely need to reinvent the food production that is been doing so far. We need the traditional knowledge, we need the ancestral, the indigenous knowledge. I think our panelists have said a lot of interesting things. And now jumping to our final part of this panel, I would like to ask, so for each part of the panelists to talk a little phrase, to speak a little phrase of how do you think that meaningful participation of youth in climate smart agriculture can be?
We need to quit, the light went out. I can just give an example. Speak more and listen to young people. In the Netherlands, a new coalition agreement, a new agricultural agreement was concluded with listening to young farmers, for example, as well. So listen to young people, take their voices and opinions on board whenever you're drafting new policies, and do that throughout the entire policy cycle, from the very beginning till the very end, including in the feedback loop.
I would really like to use the opportunity to echo Judy's powerful words, because youth inclusion starts with including us in problem identification, and that's exactly what I'm hearing you say. Maybe climate smart agriculture is a solution to a problem that we're not really answering, and if we were talking about the problems more, maybe the language wouldn't be climate smart agriculture, it would be indigenous rights, it would be land rights, it would be human rights, it would be agroecology, it would be food sovereignty. So just to really emphasize that, include youth in problem identification and problem analysis, especially indigenous youth, and you will see conversations change.
I have on my chest the pin for the Nobel Peace Prize that we won a few years ago. But yesterday, a Nobel Peace Prize was given also for some studies in economics. And the main work that these dear professors that got the prize was really promote inclusive institutions for development. And I do think that if we create inclusive institutions and a context in which everybody can be heard, everybody can participate, everybody can be a voice, an actor of change, then youth will do their part and will do it very well. So we need to trust, we need to create this environment of trust, we need to create this environment that is inclusive for them to have a voice and for them to participate actively to the change that are needed to make a difference for a zero hunger world of tomorrow. Thank you.
We've been asking for inclusion and involvement. We no longer want that. We want to be the people who design the policies that think works for us as young people, of course, and not just young people, include all vulnerable young people, marginalized young people, the young people living with, young people with disabilities, sorry, and all other the adolescent young people. Allow us to design it for ourselves. Do not include us, do not involve us. Allow us to be the people who design it.
Thank you, everyone. I think I have no words for such a great interventions. I think with that, our panel is closed. Back to you, David. Thank you, everyone.
Back to just David. I too would like to be on the stage. No, I'm just joking. But what an amazing panel. Can we give a round of applause one more time for our panel? Thank you so much for the insightful discussions highlighting the critical role of youth and indigenous leadership in shaping climate-smart agriculture, or not climate-smart agriculture, traditional indigenous agriculture, through innovation, policy, and the preservation of knowledge. Together, we can create a more sustainable and resilient world. I will now pass the floor to Yoko Trirubianco, who will be hosting a fireside chat on building bridges between policy and action with his brilliant youth policy board members, Osman Navik and Maria Jose Cervantes. Yoko, over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Okay, once again, good morning, everyone. Perfect. So I'm glad to be here. I am Joko, will be your moderator for today's sessions on the topic of policy into actions. And I would like to invite to the stage Osman Nakvi and Maria Jose, the Youth Policy Board member of the World Food Forum. Yeah, so we are really thrilled that we have two brilliant, remarkable Youth Policy Board members of the World Food Forum today, Osman and Maria. And today we'll dive deep into how young leaders can actually shaping and influencing policy agenda, especially in the field of agri-food system. So let's get started. But before it, I would like to know more about what you are guys doing, like what's your background. Would you please tell us more about what you are advocating right now? Maybe starting with Maria, it's okay.
Great. Thank you, Joko. Well, my name is Maria Jose Cervantes. I'm from the land of the rainforest, sloths and pura vida. I'm from Costa Rica. I am very glad to be here. And I am forestry engineer. I have been working the past 7 years on agriculture, agroforestry, and climate action. I work both in the field and also trying to promote policies for a just transition in the transformation of agri-food systems, and also trying to promote better practices in coffee production in Costa Rica.
Okay, thank you. So, Osman?
Thanks, Joko, for having us. Osman Nakvi here. I work with Invest in Canada. It's an agency out of the Government of Canada. I work with Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies to, I guess, increase their global expansion. Prior to that, was an advisor to Canada's Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, which was very exciting. Got to work on international policy files and domestic ones, and recently graduated as valedictorian from my MBA program. So there you go.
Oh, amazing. Fun. Yeah, so get back to Maria, because I know that you're working a lot with actions with a coffee project in Costa Rica. Like, how do you effectively implement action plans after a policy is passed while ensuring community receptiveness?
Great, thank you. Well, I have 3 words to answer that: an effective just transition. I think that this process of implementation requires a strategy participatory approach that bridges the gap between policy adoption and the real-world impact. And it must be ensured that every historical gap is addressed, that ancestral knowledge and is part of that solution, that consider the gaps of the system and in terms of access to resources, especially for young people, and also seek to generate incentives for that transformation and to move forward towards the sustainable, resilient forms of production. And I think that that process of transformation and adoption of policies must be carried out through co-construction. It's not a one-way transfer knowledge. And it is a process where the common good is sought towards resilience and respecting the individuality of each community, and recovering the local knowledge as well, while adding the best possible by contextualized innovations and technology.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria, on highlighting like the effective just transitions, also covering the local knowledge that the society and community have. And yeah, I think it's also related to the next questions. When we talk about policy, of course, we need to pitch ideas. And I know Osman are having MBA. Yeah, more than business, will be very experienced in pitching ideas. Osman, like, how can we effectively like pitch ideas and push for specific policy changes and priorities reflecting on your experience working in agriculture sector?
Well, Joko, thanks for the question. I think the audience is going to hate me for this, but to answer the question, we'll have to go back to school. So there'll be a few different learnings. First, it's important to think strategically and not just brainstorm. Brainstorming is a great starting point, but strategy planning involves being methodical. It involves having a series of frameworks. Perhaps the audience may have heard of PEST, SWOT, and so on. But using that to create an evidence-based course of action to move your policy priority forward. Then after strategic planning, it's important to formulate a briefing document. Nearly every leader you'll come across, whether the prime minister, the president, the minister, they'll need some sort of briefing document to help them to be convinced of the idea. Now, you're probably going to ask me, what the heck is a briefing document and what's included in one? So, Joko, I'm glad you asked. It's for the audience at home as well. It's important to include the executive summary. Make sure that your introduction is up there, highlight the main issue, pull out your qualitative and quantitative data, then analyze it, and make sure that your recommendations are there at the end. What to keep in mind when you're compiling such a policy document, Joko? That's know your purpose, know your audience, and what are you really trying to communicate? Now, finally, the third pillar would be to be able to influence and pitch your policy effectively. That's honestly, I go back to this all the time, regardless of the level of individual I'm dealing with. And that is using logos, ethos, and pathos. And some of us may have heard that before. Show of hands, maybe? Okay. Okay, so this is a great learning opportunity. All right, so logos is to use logic. Ethos is to pull in authority or credibility. And pathos is to use emotion. Because sometimes, regardless of your strategic plan and how thorough it is, and how logical it is, and how evidence-based it is, it might just come down to emotions and pitching on that. So your question included bringing back an agriculture example. This reminds me of a time when I was working in the Minister of Agriculture's office, and the Prime Minister asked the Minister, what do you want included in your mandate letter? So naturally, she came to our office and asked, Osman, what do you think should be included in my mandate letter? You know, the staff has to do the work. So I quickly compiled the 5-year strategy plan, obviously top issues, assessment, key implications, future strategy, then made the briefing using the framework that we just discussed. Then used ethos, which was credibility and authority. I knew I was just an advisor in our office, so I pulled in other legislators to also advocate on behalf of the plan. And finally, the result was through my strategic plan, we were able to adopt technology in agriculture as a priority, which was new to Canada at the time. Thanks.
Thank you, Osman, for pointing out about how to effectively pitch an ideas, especially in the policy priority about logos, ethos, and pathos. It's really interesting. Well, in Costa Rica, you run several projects, Maria, and how do you make sure that impact is measured and routinely incorporate community feedback?
Great, thank you, Joko. Well, I think the answer is simple, but it's kind of too difficult to be done. And I think that with indicators that show not only transformational, indicators that show transformational actions, not affirmative actions. Because I think that the era of fulfilling quotas is over. And we need to think about the true inclusion that happens in the implementation as well, but also mostly in the planification. And this can be done through prior consultations to define lines of actions, common goals, and also the validation of the plans, and monitoring and evaluating systems, and that evaluates each phase of the transition and ensures that the gaps actually are addressed. And with this, I want to emphasize that communities and vulnerable populations are the ones who should give the guidelines for each step, and even before the policy is formulated. So, yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, thank you for highlighting about measuring the impact in doing several projects that you have done in Costa Rica. Well, we get back to Osman, as you have a very good business background. Like, how can we as young people capitalize on windows of opportunity to drive our priorities forward?
Thank you, Joko. There's two real components to this. It's the first is timing, and the next is striking while it's hot. When it comes to timing, it's important to be aware of issues in the news and issues that are important to your government. As it relates to Commonwealth countries, for instance, that would involve being aware of committees and being aware of what's happening in question period. In addition to that, you need to watch for leadership changes, because as a leader changes, the priorities of that organization may shift as well. Be aware of the local, national, and international events that are happening around you. From there, we go into that second component, Joko, striking while it's hot. What does that mean, right? So, first thing to being able to strike is have your policy briefing ready. We went over what a policy briefing includes. It includes your executive summary, your introduction, your main issue, the qualitative and quantitative data, analysis, and recommendation. Next, you're going to mobilize your community. Find your allies. Make sure that you're reaching out to organizations who have mutually aligned interests. Some community leaders, legislators. Next would be to find your project sponsor. And that was really helpful to me in my last example, pulling in the parliamentary secretary, for instance, to be my advocate. And then comes framing the issue. This is actually really fun, especially for our comms nerds in the crowd, perhaps. Framing the issue means to align with the priorities of your audience. So I'll give you a fun example. If you want to make community gardens in your community, and you know that the government wants to make a green agenda, then talk about how your community garden will reduce emissions by having fewer cars on the road and having people drive to the grocery stores. That's where you see alignment. Then from there, the last two components would be leveraging media. Every news outlet has a news cycle and they need to fill it. So why not reach out and have your story told? And then finally, engage directly with decision makers, whether that's appearing in front of committee or asking for meetings in front of the minister or the president or whoever may be interested in hearing you, and lobbying. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Osman. Very insightful talks, especially in using the mobilizations, especially as young people. We are using social media a lot. It's actually a good way to mobilize in a positive ways. But last but not least, I would like to have a final question for both of you. What kind of takeaway that do you feel right now while joining the World Food Forum this week?
Can you repeat that, please?
So what kind of takeaways do you feel to take during the World Food Forum this week?
Well, I'm hoping trying to work more in networking and looking forward to create that inclusive policies and promote more locally actions and see how to learn from each region. I think that we have very things in common that we need to address a lot of urgencies and I think that is a really great space to highlight all those actions and take the best of each practices, of each experiences as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria, on highlighting the importance of local actions. Yeah.
Joko, what a great question, because there's thousands of people here and they're all looking for that takeaway. One thing that comes to mind would be to encourage you to be bold, to be disruptive. All of this effort is being done to hear their ideas. So they need to take advantage of the situation, and they are change makers, so they have to make the change.
Okay, make the change, guys. This is actually important. It's very simple to all of you guys here. Don't wait for change, but be the force to make it happen. So yeah, we are young people, we are young leaders, so make sure we are taking part in shaping a more sustainable and climate resilient agriculture. I think that's all for today's sessions. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for that wonderful panel. Thank you. So thank you all for your insights, which have certainly given us great food for thought. And here at the World Food Forum, for those who perhaps aren't aware, the Youth Policy Board, which we've heard from 4 of our Youth Policy Board this morning, are really the foundation of what we have. They organize, they strategize for our regional and our thematic assemblies. And you'll have the opportunity to meet Gabriel, Joko, Osman, Maria Jose, and many other Youth Policy Board members. Maybe can we get a wave in the audience? We have some of our Youth Policy Board members here. Okay, fantastic. Throughout the week. So be sure to connect with them, learn from them, share with them your perspectives to make sure the conversations continue beyond this room. And now it is my great pleasure to pass the floor to another true champion for youth, the UN Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs and the head of the UN Youth Office, Mr. Felipe Paulier. Felipe, the floor is yours.
So, good morning to all of you. Thank you for inviting me to close this beautiful panel. Good afternoon, good night to those that are following us through social media and through the internet. That's also the magic of technology that allows us to be more than the only privileged that have the chance to be at this room. So on my side, I want to first congratulate the amazing panelists we have, and mainly those young people that were part of these conversations and that came here as what they are. They are experts also on their own fields, you know? And that's why it's so crucial that institutions, we take one step forward and we continue to create spaces for a more meaningful participation. And I insist on the concept of meaningful. And yesterday in the opening of the Youth Forum, I had the chance to share a few of ideas on why we believe, on what we believe is meaningful youth participation. Because this has been a process in which institutions have been starting to change. A few years ago, it was enough with consultations, and now it's clear that it's not. And the smart decision is that we move into these systematic and meaningful processes. And these systematic processes include us to be inclusive, because youth is extremely diverse, you know. We try, sometimes we put youth like in the same box, but youth is extremely diverse. We're speaking about different lives, different contexts, different experiences. We're speaking about different groups of age that have different challenges at each of those points. So let's keep that in mind. We need inclusive, and we need to bring diversity when it's about creating processes. And we need processes also to be safe, because when we are speaking about issues that are related to peace and security issues, it's crucial that we are creating spaces, from institutional spaces, that are safe for young people to really say what they want to say and what they need to say. And finally, it's important that these spaces are accountable, because accountability is what makes a process of participation really meaningful. So I believe that FAO has been an enormous champion when it's about creating more meaningful youth participation. And I think that the World Food Forum is a testament of this intention, not only of creating a space that is co-created with young people, but also a space that is trying to bring the global into the national, and the national, the local, into the global. Because the launching during this forum of more than 11 national challenges that will add to the 14 that already exist is clearly the signal that we need to create spaces at the global level that are bringing also the local community. So, and I'm sure that this space in 2024 is extremely different and much more powerful than what it was in 2021 when this space was launched. And I didn't have the chance to participate before, but what I can say from me here is that there's a willingness and there's a voluntary to continue to advance on certain direction. But of course, every space is imperfect, and I'm sure there are many things to improve. And I'm sure that it's about how young people that are being part of it are co-shaping this space to be every year even better. So 3 takeaways from the conversations today on my side. First, when it's about youth-led initiatives, we need to think about innovation in a holistic way. Innovation is about inclusion of technology, but it's about inclusion of traditional knowledge. And it's about inclusion of community-based approach. A second takeaway, we need to move from consultation into participation, into being on the whole cycle. And that needs us to be open to dialogue, because meaningful participation doesn't occur when we are in a room, every one of us reading a paper of talking points, you know. Meaningful participation and transformation comes when we have a space for dialogue. And the third takeaway, it's also about the only way of really empower and really advancing, it's about also unlocking financing for youth-led initiatives. So on my side, thank you once again, and I encourage you to be at least 2 things on my perspective. And they might seem contradictory, but I don't believe they are. On one side, we need to be disruptive, because that's also the role of young people inside institutions. It's about disruption, it's about change, it's about transformation. But at the same time, we need to be collaborative, because the change will happen if it's intergenerational. And at the same time, we need to be collaborative between each other. No? And I like what some of you said today. You know, it's what I'm bringing from here is a network, is a collaboration we are bringing, no? And it's this collaboration intergenerational and intergenerational. So thank you once again, and I hope this is a continuous of most powerful activities during this whole week. And thank you once again to the amazing team of the World Food Forum.
Thank you again one more time to Dr. Felipe Pollier, Assistant Secretary General to the United Nations. The same way that our World Food Forum has grown and thrived year after year, getting bigger and better, the UN Youth Office has been created, which is a testament in and of itself, but we're so excited to see y'all grow and thrive as well, hopefully with all of us young people as partners as you go. But thank you for bringing us to our session's close. Rest assured, this is only the beginning. We won't get back on the stage. Rest assured, this is only the beginning. Over the course of the next week, there will be over 15 sessions of that youth assembly, which you're all welcome to join, taking place in the Ethiopia room. You can also find us on the agenda document under Global Youth Forum.
So, thank you all for your engagement, and I look forward to hearing many more of your perspectives throughout the week. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.